All right, let's dive right into this explainer on the Tevijja Sutta. It's this absolutely fascinating ancient text from the Dīgha Nikāya that completely dismantles blind faith, and it does so in favor of a verifiable, highly logical path to inner peace. Look, if you've ever questioned the dogma handed down to you, or maybe you've just wondered how to actually bridge the gap between abstract beliefs and real, tangible psychological well-being, you are in the exact right place. We're going to break down exactly how this ancient wisdom uses razor-sharp logic to completely challenge the status quo.
We've broken this explainer down into 5 quick steps: debate over the right path, the blind leading the blind, obstacles crossing the river, the foundation of virtue, and finally, achieving the divine abodes.
Starting things off with Section 1, debate over the right path. So, it's a pretty universal human conflict, right? Adopting inherited beliefs without ever actually verifying them for yourself. Here we have 2 really bright young men. Vasuttha is absolutely 100% convinced that his teacher, Pokarasati, holds the monopoly on truth. Meanwhile, Bharadvaja is equally certain his teacher, Taruka, is the only one who knows the true way to union with Brahma, which was the ultimate spiritual goal in their culture. They are locked in a total stalemate, aggressively arguing over a destination neither of them has ever seen, using maps drawn by people they just blindly trust.
Completely unable to resolve this argument, they take it to the Buddha. But the Buddha doesn't just pick a side. Instead, he uses this brilliant bit of Socratic questioning. He springs a simple, almost trap-like question on them that just upends their entire worldview. He asks, has even one of these teachers ever actually seen Brahma face to face?
Which brings us to Section 2, the blind leading the blind.
Now, the Buddha doesn't just stop with their immediate teachers. He traces their entire intellectual and spiritual lineage backward through time. He asks about the teacher's teachers. Then he goes back 7 whole generations of ancestors. He literally goes all the way back to the ancient rishis, the original creators of the mantras they're chanting. And the stunning realization Vasuttha is forced to admit out loud: absolutely no one in this entire historical chain has ever claimed to have directly seen the destination they're supposedly pointing everyone toward.
It perfectly illustrates just how absurd their debate really is. The text uses this powerful, almost darkly funny metaphor of a string of blind men holding on to each other. Arguing over whose teacher is right is literally like arguing over directions from a lineage of guides where the leader is blind, the guy in the middle is blind, and the person at the very back is blind. The teachings have just been passed on mechanically, completely devoid of any direct, verifiable experience.
To really hammer this point home, the source text uses another vivid analogy. Imagine you are building a massive, grand staircase right in the middle of a busy crossroads. When people walk by and ask what you're building it for, you say, "Oh, it's for this beautiful mansion." But then they ask what the mansion looks like or where exactly it's located, and you have to admit, you actually have no idea. It proves that faith without evidence just fundamentally lacks a foundation. It's a ton of wasted effort built on an illusion.
Moving on to Section 3, obstacles crossing the river.
Okay, so if blind faith is literally a staircase to nowhere, what's the alternative? The text immediately shifts to practical action. The Buddha uses the local Asiravati River, which would have been right nearby, as a grounding metaphor. Look, if you want to cross a river, you can't just stand on the bank and shout, "Hey, other side of the river, come over here to me." That's the equivalent of just praying to deities without taking any personal action. Plus, you can't swim if you're standing there with your arms tied tightly behind your back, which represents being entirely bound up by sensual pleasures. And you certainly can't navigate the water if you are asleep, completely covered by a blanket, representing a mind blinded by mental hindrances. You literally have to wake up, untie yourself, and get in the water to swim. Now here's where a massive hypocrisy gets exposed. The destination these young men seek, Brahma, is defined by having absolutely zero anger, zero malice, total self-control, and absolute purity. Yet the teachers claiming to lead them there, they're heavily weighed down by anger, malice, lack of self-control, and deep worldly attachments. They are actively practicing habits every single day that is the exact opposite of the state they want to attain.
So it begs a really critical question for all of us. Can you actually reach a destination if literally every step you take is in the wrong direction? Logically, the answer is no. You simply cannot achieve union with a pure state of being if your daily actions are actively cultivating an impure one.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, the foundation of virtue.
Having completely broken down all those illusions of blind faith and contradictory actions, the explainer pivots to the actual actionable solution.
Unlike the blind leading the blind, the Buddha presents his own knowledge very differently. He asks Vasetha, if a guy born and raised in the nearby village of Manasakata was asked for directions around his own hometown, would he hesitate? Obviously not. The Buddha is stating that he knows the path to true peace just as intimately as a local knows their own neighborhood streets. He's offering a verifiable map, and it's based entirely on direct personal experience.
Step 1 on this map is sila, or virtue. And we're not just talking about some vague, fuzzy concept of being a good person. This is a rigorous, practical set of behavioral restraints. It means actively practicing compassion, speaking the absolute truth, and completely rejecting the hoarding of excess wealth. Crucially, it strictly forbids the exact tricks the other teachers were using to make a living. Fortune-telling, astrology, reading omens, magic rituals. The verifiable path demands you drop the mystical trickery entirely and clean up your real-world behavior first.
You can see how these steps form a highly logical, psychological progression. You don't just jump straight to enlightenment. First, step 1, you establish that pure ethical virtue, which clears your conscience. Then, step 2, you practice restraint of the senses, meaning you stop letting every passing sight, sound, or craving totally hijack your attention. And finally, step 3, you cultivate mindfulness and contentment, becoming deeply aware of your physical body and completely satisfied with just the basics you need to survive.
Finally, Section 5, Achieving the Divine Abodes. Here's the ultimate psychological framework this source material promises. Before you can get any real clarity, a practitioner has to systematically identify and rip away what are called the 5 hindrances. The text treats these like literal, heavy chains on the human mind: sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and paralyzing doubt. As long as those are present, your mind is clouded. You're still that person asleep under the heavy blanket on the riverbank.
I love how relatable the text makes this. It doesn't use lofty, abstract spiritual jargon to describe beating these hindrances. It compares it to that incredible weight-off-your-shoulders feeling of finally paying off a massive, crushing debt, or the sheer physical relief of recovering from a terrible illness. Think about how it would feel to walk out of a dark prison or survive a dangerous desert crossing to finally reach a safe village. That level of profound, tangible relief is exactly what this path is offering.
Once your mind is actually freed from those exhausting burdens, you finally have the energy to naturally cultivate the 4 divine abodes, or Brahma viharas. This is the absolute pinnacle of mental purification in the text. We're talking about loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, which basically means being genuinely happy for other people's success, and equanimity, which is a perfectly balanced, unshakable state of mind.
There's this striking auditory metaphor used here to describe this state. When your mind is finally free of hostility and limitations, you naturally radiate compassion outwards in every possible direction, completely effortlessly. It's just like a powerful conch blower standing on top of a hill. Their sound reaches north, south, east, and west without them having to struggle at all. A purified mind naturally extends that same goodwill to the entire world.
And this is where the logical loop completely closes. Remember those hypocritical teachers we talked about earlier? Well, by contrast, look at the awakened practitioner who actually follows this verifiable path of virtue. They have no anger, no malice, absolute self-control, and they are pure. They literally embody the exact same qualities of the ultimate goal they were seeking. The path and the destination have essentially become the exact same thing.
The way this text wraps up is just incredibly satisfying. After hearing this intensely logical teardown of dogma and seeing this highly structured map for mental purification, the 2 young men, Vasetha and Bharadvaja, immediately dropped their pointless debate. They totally abandon the whole blind leading the blind routine, and they choose the practical, observable path of verifiable action.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final thought to really examine in your own life. Are you spending all your energy arguing over the blueprints of a mansion you've never even seen? Or are you actively, step by step, cultivating the exact qualities of the destination you want to reach? The verifiable path is always right there waiting for you, whenever you're willing to untie your hands and start swimming.